Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Easy Peasy Books podcast. And I have a very interesting guest today. And I have Jennie Jolly, who is an editor and a proofreader. And I met her on LinkedIn, which kind of just shows how you can meet everybody on LinkedIn. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So Jennie and I met for a coffee chat, which I encourage people to do. And then I said, I got to have you on my podcast. You're so interesting, so interesting. So Jennie, before we get stuck in and start talking about our topic today, can you please just tell everybody who you are and what you do, and then we'll start chatting.
Hey, okay. Well, thanks so much, Jillian. I loved our talk last week, so I know we'll have a good time today. But like you said, my name's Jennie Jolly, and that's not a pen name. I actually married Chris Jolly 8 years ago, and so I'm legit Jennie Jolly, but I get asked that a lot. And we live in rural southern Indiana, so I'm out here. We have chickens and a feral cat who decided she's more of a Pottery Barn cat, and she lives inside now, so she's about useless. She's not out running around catching mice and things like we hoped. But we have a dairy farm down the road and cornfields, and so we're just out here in the woods. But yeah, I am a total word nerd. Words are my favorite things. So when I was looking to reinvent my career and escape the corporate world, the first word that popped in my head was proofreading. So I did some courses to make sure that I did know what I was doing. And along the way, realized I'm a pretty decent copy editor as well. So added that to my repertoire. And so, yeah, I just play with words all day.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I just wanted to give an extra shout out to Catherine Williams because she actually tagged Jennie in a post, which is how I learned about Jennie as an editor. And as a book coach, I'm always looking to know other editors, proofreaders, other people in the book world. So just wanted to give that shout out because we connect people. And that's what's, again, another great thing about LinkedIn. So one of the things that, and I just love Jennie and her chickens because she has a newsletter called Foul Language. And I'm going to make a note to self. I want to go subscribe to it because she has an incredible open rate. And so I love that. And so we'll put those links in the show notes so other people can check it out. And I just thought it was such a great name. So you are definitely a word nerd. And when we had our Zoom call, your chicken was tapping to get in the house. It was just the cutest thing. And she turned the webcam so I can see it. So I love it. So one of the things that Jennie said, and this is something I always, cringe thinking about, is she said she's a proofreader with always on proofreading. And I've always thought, like, as you make a post on, LinkedIn or wherever you're posting, and you're just kind of like, I see a typo that I've done and I'm like, oh, and I quickly hit that edit button. I don't care what the rules are for the algorithm. I'm going to clean it up. So when Jennie said she was an always on proofreader, it was just like, oh my gosh, it's true. It's true. So Jennie, tell us about that gift, or maybe it's a curse. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of it as my superpower. But it's one of those things that's always come so naturally and easily to me that you don't realize it's not that easy for everybody. And so, but yeah, I mean, I've been an unofficial proofreader my whole life. It doesn't matter if I'm reading a menu or a sign going down the street or a magazine, or sometimes it's hard to read for pleasure because my brain is still looking for mistakes. But yeah, it just to me, it's a gift. And I love sharing it with people, especially people who it's not their gift. A lot of people just want to get the words down on the page and get it out the door. And so, it's nice to have somebody who can come in and help make it all work better.
I love that. I love that. And I'm going to be totally transparent here, everybody. And that Jennie said, Jillian, I was on your website and I saw that you had a few errors. Would you be interested in hearing about that? And I was like, of course. Thank you. Yes. It was like immediately like, oh my gosh. And then in my head, although I think I said it loud, I said, well, that's what I get for going on my website at 2 o'clock in the morning and, trying to make a little edit and you're tired. You got one eye open type of thing. And I'm working on a little 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is like so tiny anyways. So that's what I got. And so I said, yes, I'm open to it. So she told me, I went and fixed them and it was all good. But I got to ask you, do you find people are they like me? Are they grateful and happy? Or are there some people that like,
Yeah, it always kind of surprises me. I have a few people that maybe seem offended, and I try to come across, because just like how I went to your website, we were going to meet that day for a coffee chat. I wanted to learn a little more about you before we got on the call. So what do? I go to your website. The first 2 pages, almost everybody checks out, are the home page and the about page. Those are the 2 most pages with the most hits. And so, yeah, your homepage, I just noticed, an extra letter at the end of one word and an extra letter at the beginning of another word. And my whole goal in life is to help people make the best first impression. That is because you don't, the whole cliche, you don't get a second chance to do that. And so if I can help somebody, I've already looked at it, I've already seen it. So it doesn't do me any good, I feel like, to withhold information. So I try to say it in a nice way to people, but I think sometimes either they don't care or maybe they are offended, but that's never my intent. It's always to help. It's not to make somebody feel bad get their feelings hurt.
I love that. I love that. And, I've seen it and I've told people, and I always do it in a private thing, and that's, I think, important, because it's like, I've seen people kind of like take people down in a public thing, like and you're just like, well, that just like, you think that makes you look good, but it just does kind of makes you look not good. So it's like, tell people privately. But it was like, I was just like, I felt so blessed. I just was just like, thank goodness she told me, because it's kind of like, you want to, I think there's an expression. It's like, be the kind of woman who will fix another woman's tiara, and it's true. It's like, if we can help, we should help. So this I love that line that you said before, that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that is so important. And so when we talk about, like, we traditionally think books. Okay. You pick up a book. Does it have, has it been proofread? Has it been edited? Are there typos? Are there goofy things that are there? The wrong word, missing words, all those different things. But we're going to talk today beyond the book, because the book is important, but that's not the only part that, authors need help with proofreading. There's much, like you just said, my website, your homepage, or the about page. It's like, are they, because it's like, your book could be perfect, but if your other parts of your author platform, so to speak, aren't looking right, that's going to leave people with a bad impression of you. So Jennie, let's talk about the psychology behind, proofreading and errors. Why does it matter? Like, don't people, like you said, there's always going to be some, we can't be perfect, but it does matter. So tell me your thoughts on why it matters.
Okay. Well, a couple things. First, I just want to say that, to me, authors think that proofreading or editing ends with the manuscript. And like you said, that's just the beginning. It's kind of an ecosystem. Your book doesn't live in isolation. Your words are everywhere all the time. Think 24/7 while you're asleep, your words are still out there working on your website and or any other material you've put out. So your Amazon page about your book, your emails that are going out, especially if it's what I call business they call evergreen material. So a one-off email that you send one time and it never goes out again. If you've got a typo, kind of like, okay, no big deal. But if it's part of your welcome sequence and it's, say, a 5 email thing that goes out repeatedly, fix it once and it's done. Your website's out there all the time. Fix it once and it's done. Any social presence that you have that's just on 24/7 kind of deserves an extra set of eyes on it. And I think it matters because it definitely, like I said, one typo, people think, oh, you're human, not a big deal. You see repeated things, it starts to affect your credibility. And that's where I think the big problem comes in. If you're reading along and you're all immersed in the material and all of a sudden you have a typo, it pulls you out of where you were in that process. And so then people just feel a friction. And they don't in their mind probably say, oh, this is a sloppy author, or they didn't know what they were doing. Like, they don't consciously have those thoughts, but all of a sudden they feel some resistance or some friction and something's not right. And so you just don't want to put that in their head.
Yes. And I've actually read some people's books, and, you're like in the intro and you're just like, oh my God, I'm in the intro and I've already like stumbled. And I feel like when I hit a typo, I feel it almost physically, like I've stumbled, and my brain goes, what? Because I've been like following along, and especially if it's someone I know, like if I know the author, it's even harder because I hear like, okay, I hear things, I hear dead people, whatever, it's like that crazy expression. But it's like when I read somebody's book, if I know them, whether they're famous or a colleague, I hear them in my head. And so, they're narrating it in my brain. And so then when I get there, it's like, I feel like they fell off the stage or something like that. And I'm like, oh, what happened? And then I pick it up and I keep reading, and then boom, we stumble again. And then if I've had like, 2 or 3 of these in the introduction, then I'm kind of like, I don't really know if I want to keep reading this book. Like, it just feels like if this part's not right, then can I trust the book? I think I lose trust. Does that sound weird? I lose trust.
Yeah. I mean, I think credibility, trust, they're kind of both hand in hand. And like you said, you start to think, if this slipped through, what else slipped through? And so it's just not where you want your reader to be. And I mean, we are human. I mean, I edit books all the time. I guarantee none of the books I edit or proofread probably have 0 mistakes, but as many as possible. Like, if I had a book go out with even 3 errors, I'd probably be mortified. But it's a thing, and it's a problem with your own material. I mean, I have found mistakes in my own. Like, I do a little slideshow called what is the name of it? It's called Clucking Good Proofreading Tips and Tricks. Of course, I've got my chicken theme going there. So I have a little slide deck that goes along with that, and I do a presentation. And I can't tell you, I went over it I don't know how many times and still found mistakes I made. So if I do this for a living, and I know it's exponentially harder for people that don't, because you're familiar with the material. Your brain is going to fill in the gap. One of my slides, I intentionally have a missing word. And at the end of the slide, I ask, did you notice? or did your
Mm.
brain just pop in the word that you knew was going to be there? And obviously some people notice, but a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I didn't even catch that. My brain filled in that blank. So, and when it's your material, you know what you wanted to say. So your brain helps you read what you meant to say, where when you read somebody else's material, it's fresh and you're not in their head. So when there's a mistake, it jumps out at you because you're not familiar with it.
Mm.
So, yeah, anything that's tied to money or credibility really deserves some extra attention. And if somebody's only going to read one paragraph about you on your about page, or if you want to be a speaker, your speaker material that goes out, you want that to be 100% clean.
Mm.
You do not want a mistake in those things, for sure.
Especially too, because that could mean the difference between you getting the gig or not getting the gig, or the client, or et cetera, et cetera. So, I think sometimes you can say, oh, I have to pay for proofreading, but it's like, what are you paying if you don't have it? And what do you make? What do you stand to gain? What do you stand to gain? Right.
Yeah. I had a lady, I finished a proofread. She decided at the last minute she should have somebody look at it. And she was also working with Catherine that we talked about earlier, was her book formatter. And just so another author recommended me to her. And so Catherine sent me the book, which supposedly was ready to go. Editing on a PDF, you make comments. So I had over 100 comments of things that weren't right. Now, some of them were a repeat. She had kept capitalizing a word that shouldn't have been. So maybe half of that 100 were just going to be an easy fix, but the other 50 were either something spelled wrong, or something was credited to somebody that didn't actually say it. Quotes were wrong, or sometimes people just put it by memory. Oh, this is what, Jackie Kennedy said, and and then they don't have it right, or they spell Jackie Kennedy wrong, or just all kinds of things. And so she actually, when we got on the phone and I had a couple of questions for her, she said, this is the best money I've ever spent. I mean, she just blurted that out when I pointed some things out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like the hugest compliment ever. Because really, in reality, it's not that expensive. Like you said, when you're looking at that book's going to be out there now, but now it's right. And so I don't know. I just think there's a lot of value in it.
Absolutely.
I'm a little prejudiced.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And you've actually kind of opened the door for the next thing I thought would be interesting, is to talk about what are the errors that you're seeing? Are they like patterns, like, capitalizing the wrong word over and over, or vice versa, like that should have been a capital thing, or, type of thing, or just the typos, like me with a double S at the, like, what the heck was that about? It's like, that's just weird.
Well, like you said, you think you were copy and pasting though.
Right.
So if you didn't completely cover what you were pasting over and an extra letter got left, I mean, there are all kinds of ways to have those simple errors. And like you said, in the middle of the night, and
just
I get it.
2 a.m. web updates. That has to go off Jillian's list of things to do.
You have to find something else to do when you wake up in the middle of the night.
Count sheep. I'm going to count sheep. It's safer. It's safer. So it can be things like, inconsistencies, maybe like you've like, oh, here you refer to, an acronym as this. And now you're like, sometimes you put like, even when people have like a TM and sometimes they trademark a framework or something like that. And it's like, well, in chapter 3, you put the TM, but on chapter 4, you didn't. And now it looks weird. Which way do you want to go? So do you kind of, do you think you need to do like styles? Like, do you do that with clients, kind of going, okay, this person's British, they're going to add a U in everything. Like how do you kind of deal with that yourself?
Well, I primarily work with Chicago Manual of Style. That's the style guide I use when I edit. I haven't done any British work, which I'd almost be afraid to, because I'd be afraid, not so much the spelling, because I can do that, but just the nuances between how they do things and how we do things, and phrases. One thing I catch a lot is people misuse cliches, or they've learned them incorrectly. And so I remember one book I did, and I kept having to correct little things like that. And the author and the book coach and I think the publisher were all meeting, and they all three were like, wow, we didn't know that that's not what that meant. We thought you used that correctly. And I'm kind of going, yeah, no, that is not what that phrase means. Or like this one, I usually crack people up. I'm like, do you want to be known for pubic relations or public relations?
Oh my God.
Because if you're using, a spell checker, it's spelled correctly. It doesn't know that you picked the wrong word. And so you might read it as public and not think, but I know people that's gone out, but not maybe with relations, but the wrong word's been in there. How easy is it to miss a letter? Another one I saw the other day is like emphasize and empathize. If you type in the wrong word, you spelled it correctly, but it's not the right word. So I think just having that human touch to make sure, apostrophes are confusing. Every people that want to put an apostrophe with every S, it's like, yeah,
It's
there's just an S, it's not owning anything right there. Commas, commas trip people up. But yeah, your brain will see the patterns, and that's when the flags go off for people reading, like, this isn't just a one-off typo. This is a pattern of doing things incorrectly. And that's the jarring and the thing we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. So that leads to, so when do you do it, sort of DIY, do it yourself, versus when do you outsource? And it sounds like, you're kind of saying it's very hard for our brains to do it ourselves, because we're going to fill in. That's what I meant. So it's like, I'm going to read it and I'm going to say, well, that's what I meant. And every time I read it, I didn't see that that's not what I typed. It's what I meant in my head. And, one of the things I always do is, try and read out loud, because I'll find the stumbles more than if I just sit there and read. But sort of, probably it's always good for us to get it as good as we can and not just say, well, the editor will pick it up or the proofreader will pick it up. It's like, we still should do it as best we can. But when do you recommend you got to get professional help?
Well, I think it's fine to do it yourself if the stakes are low, if it's not your reputation on the line. Like I said, some social media posts, people slap those up and, they might have a typo. And I think most people are pretty forgiving of a Facebook post which you can go back and fix if you notice. But of course, I try, even when I'm commenting, not to have errors, because it's me. I mean, because I feel like, oh, people know what I do. So yeah, I kind of probably have a little bit of a higher standard when they read my stuff. But, if the stakes are low, if it's especially, I think a big thing is, do you have time to step away from it? I call it post-writing hibernation. And I'm talking like 24 to 48 hours. Give your brain a total break from it and let it just kind of, reset, reprocess, and then come back to it. If you don't have time to take that, I think that's, kind of one sign. If you've looked at it too long, you go over and over it and you're still finding mistakes, or you're still finding the same kind of mistake. If you need objectivity and not just spell check, because when I proofread, if somebody's paying me just to proofread, I try not to meddle too much. I try to shut the editing part of my brain off and just do what they're paying me to do, because I'll read it and I'll be like, oh, they could have said that so much better. But what they said is technically okay, so I have to leave it. But sorry. But yeah, if you I just I don't know. I can't emphasize enough to have somebody else look at your material, because again, you know what you're trying to say. When I read it, I'm trying to read it as that person's target audience. And if I don't understand it, or it doesn't make sense to me, although it makes perfect sense to the person who wrote it, I go back to them and say, hey, I don't really know what this sentence means, or I don't know what you were trying to get across. I've tried to think about it, but, can you help me here? And so I just think that's so important, because if it's lost on me, it's probably going to be lost on the reader. And eventually, at some point, they're just going to put the book down because they're like, what are they even talking about? Or what, I don't know what this is. And it might be a mistake, or it might just be, they're explaining it in their own technical jargon, or, which is fine depending on what your book is. But if you just have too many of those instances, I just feel like you're going to lose your reader, and they're not going to recommend your book, and they're not going to get a lot out of it either. And that was a lot. I mean, people put their heart and soul into their book. And so I want it to be successful. I want them to get it out in the world and share their knowledge. It just needs to be reader friendly.
Perfect. And so again, we emphasize it's beyond the book. Like, first of all, we're recommending the manuscript. Yes. But, and sort of like the improv world, and your website, and your LinkedIn profile, and your social post. There's nothing worse than a launch post and they spell launch, book launch. I saw that the other day, and it was like, I think they're missing the U. Was it like book launch or something? And you're just like, you're just kind of like all those things. So, go beyond. Think of your emails, think of your email sequences. If you do a newsletter, that's something where you might want to have somebody do stuff for you. So, just think beyond the book. That sounds like the message that we're talking about today, right, Jennie?
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, just keep that word evergreen in mind. Say you're a coach and you have a course, and your course is out there all the time. That's an evergreen item too. I mean, that, like I said, things that are temporary, one and done, gone, don't worry too much about it. But if it's something that lives on the internet, it's definitely worth making sure it's right. And, don't think of proofreading as nitpicking. It's not. It's about protecting the reader's experience and your credibility across your entire brand. You just want to keep that clean.
I love that. I love that. Well, is there anything else that, any parting words that you have for us today?
No, that was kind of my big ending right there.
I loved it.
Not nitpicking, but yeah.
I love that. Well, I so appreciate you taking the time and sharing all this knowledge with us. I, again, will put your contact information and everything in the show notes. So if anybody wants to reach out and get in touch with you and learn about your awesome newsletter, Foul Language, just love that. I just love that. And we're looking forward to you coming back when you're, I know you're an author. You got your book in your background. So we'll put that on as well. And just maybe we'll have you come back too and put your author hat on and talk about that too.
That'd be fun. And I'm hoping to have one or two more, but they'll be children's books, not adult books. But yeah, I'm excited.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody who listened in today. I hope you got some insight here. I know I did. And it's great. It's great. It's all very, very good. So thank you, everybody. And we will listen and hear you next time. Bye, everybody.